All right, welcome back. This is Daybreak. Time now for our paper review on the 6th day of June 2019. And I'll tell you a little bit about our guests who are here to talk a little bit about access to justice, the challenges in terms of barriers to justice. And that's what will take us through up until 8 o'clock. And Trevor will be talking about that shortly. But let me introduce our guest, Joy Mdivo, Executive Director, East African Center for Law and Justice. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Right next to her is Wilson Kinyua, a criminal justice advocate and activist.
Lawyer.
And lawyer, okay, we leave it at that. Lawyer, welcome to the program as well. We have Harriet Chigai, Vice President, Law Society of Kenya. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Kakai Kissinger, an advocate of the court. Welcome as well. Thank you for joining us. And today, obviously, we want to look at matters justice. But before that, something very interesting on the front page of the Standard, which is related to some extent. And Trevor?
Exactly. So Maraga has been quoted saying our leaders have let us down. That is the front page of the Standard. CJ's verdict says in a hard-hitting speech delivered abroad, the Chief Justice accuses the other two arms of government, that is the executive and the legislature, of selective use and sabotage of laws. The story continues on page 5, where he continues to say that the law in Kenya, just as is the case in the rest of Africa, is skewed to benefit business dynasties and tenderpreneurs who influence presidential elections. Some of the most powerful contributions there by the Chief Justice, David Maraga, and that's where we want to begin, Joy. What do you make of these statements by the CJ? Because this is not the first time he's bringing it up. Even in 2017, he still said the same thing. The legal system is skewed to benefit the rich over the poor.
Thank you so much for having me. When I read this article by the Chief Justice, the report on the Chief Justice, I must say there are parts of it that I actually agree very strongly. Case in point is we passed Chapter 6 of the Constitution. We wanted to have leaders of integrity, and we decided to put in place measures to ensure that this happens. But what we saw when the Leadership and Integrity Act was being passed was a lot of horse trading and, you know, let's put this, let's remove that. And everything you could tell was tailored towards trying to cushion people who might falling afoul of the act. For example, this provision that we have in our law where if you're accused, you do not have to step aside from your office until you have exhausted all available means of appeal. That just tells you, I mean, if you're in office and you're facing criminal sanction and you're facing trial, what we saw with the DCJ the other day, it's because our laws are skewed to cushion those who may be targeted for high-level corruption. But given that, we have to also look at our society. What do we expect? The other day you heard about governors asking for VIP treatment when they're being arrested. It's sort of like we expect wakubwa to be treated in a certain way, and we accept this as something that is, you know, it is a reasonable expectation that you cannot arrest a chicken thief the same way you arrest a governor. So I think even Kenyans ourselves, we set ourselves up for this. But I must admit that when I read this article, the thing that stood out for me was a frustration by one arm of government against the other two arms of government. And that's a very serious indictment. And if I was the president, I would wait for the CJ to come back, and the president come back from Vancouver, and I say, you know what, let's sit down, because the three arms of government have to be in congruence. Otherwise, we will always have this start, stop, which is where we are right now. And with the point that you made, it's different for the poor. It's actually true, because if you're in the same predicament as a person who's a little bit more elite, you'll find your treatment, even from the time you're arrested to the time you're arraigned, will be vastly different from somebody else who's a little bit more cushioned in life.
What do you make of the fact that the president of the courts effectively says that, I mean, he comes out quite frustrated? When the president of the country, and has been on record 2 years ago, also came out quite frustrated. You remember the classic, mnataka nifanye nini?
Exactly.
When MPs come sit here and also say we are frustrated, so who is fooling who? If everyone who should be giving Kenyans guidance is frustrated, because it's fair enough. It's one thing for the Chief Justice to say executive parliament are the worst enemies, but do you get the feeling that he's almost saying there's nothing I can do, like I've reached the end of my powers?
Allow me to go straight for the jugular. This is a weakness with our legislature. Our legislature writes laws anticipating that one day they will need those laws to rescue them. Remember, let's just draw a little chronology. Look at what happened with the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. When we started with the initial CASA, it was CASA those days. With the initial CASA, what happened? The moment you start reaching out to big fish, somebody goes to court, it's declared unconstitutional, we change it to CAC. Then somebody comes in and does the same thing. You find Ringara coming too close, he's unconstitutional, he's out of the office. Then you get PLO Lumumba coming in. He moves in a little bit, you know what, your tenure doesn't work. So the law is written with the back doors and with the loopholes from the beginning, knowing that maybe one day we will need it. That is why proving the crime of stealing, the ingredients are very simple, they are very well laid out in the penal code. It's not mathematics. But look at some of this the requirements, for example, the ingredients. When you're trying to prove something like corruption, you find that the ingredients are so many, so complicated. By the time you're done, even the court is not sure what they're doing. So the first place I would lay blame is at the legislature. Our laws are too verbose, too wide, and in that wideness is where we find the space for people to pass through when they need to pass through.
Loopholes. Wilson, you've been through the legal system yourself and even served time, and now you're just advocating to ensure that it's done in a proper way. What do you make of the CJ's statements, based from experience?
I can't agree more with what Chief Justice has alluded here, and of course what my sister is trying to explain here. Recently, the Chief Justice considered what is often dismissed, that criminal justice especially has been punishing, or is mostly punishing the poor and not the elite. And there is demonstration and examples we can see. For example, you remember there was a registrator, without mentioning the name, who was accused of issues of sexual offenses, and he was not even arrested. Why? Because he's supposed to be taken for DNA test to prove whether he has case to answer. That is before you are taken to court. This is not normally what happens to the common person. You go and answer that when you're in prison. And of course, even before you're brought in, you have some, abnormal adjournments, like you're already convicted before you are tried, you are taken through the process. So this is exactly what happens. And what my sister was trying to explain, again, when we go to the court, you realize that the society has evolved. And the legislators are going on to, to areas that are of law, that are favoring them. And in terms of those commercial areas and, the civil cases and all that. But in criminal justice, that was one area that has been so much directed, because they don't see themselves coming there. And any law that they are going to talk about it there, it's something that is, they don't think that they can be there or their children can be there. So it is not something they are giving their all. It is emotive, the way they are doing it is emotive. It's like they're already punishing the poor. Okay,
Wilson, we'll come back to you in just a bit. But Harriet, you're in the Law Society of Kenya, Vice President. Surely you might have some solutions to this, because even Steve says, did the CJ give the solution to the problem he just highlighted? What are the solutions to this? And do you first agree? And do we have solutions to it as LSK?
Thank you very much. First, I must say I totally agree with the CJ. And this is something that ever since he was put in office is actually something that he's been discussing. It's something that he's been highlighting every other day. And one of the key things that we must put in mind is a question of ethics and ethos. I'm keen to note that in his article, he has actually brought in the element of Christianity and Muslims culture, and you'll realize that the solution lies with me and you. It can't go beyond that. And I want to use very simple examples. The culture that we are impacting on our children, who later on become the leadership in this country. And this culture, then, we are seeing it cutting across board. Human beings have naturally become very selfish. Very, very selfish. And that is one thing we're also seeing in the leadership.
But he's not talking about human beings. He's saying Kenyans.
An entire
and two groups of Kenyans. Parliament and the executive.
Kenyans,
and I'd like to know what you mean when you say that solution lies between you and me.
It's us. It's us Kenyans. We have put the culture of impunity, the culture of selfishness. That is why when we are making laws, we are looking at self. We are not looking at the general.
That's not we, it's the legislature. We don't all make laws. I mean, the person on the street can be arrested arbitrarily and charged and jailed without getting anticipatory bail.
No. The moment you decide on a leadership and put it there to take lead on matters that concern you and I, let us blame ourselves Kenyans to start with. What kind of leaders are we putting in parliament?
How about the LSK? What are you doing as the Law Society of Kenya to ensure that Kenyans are cushioned?
The Law Society of Kenya, definitely, and you've seen we've been in court on various matters of public interest litigation. And I must say, we are also constrained in terms of funding. All these cases as well need funding for us to be out there. One of the key things that we have currently put, our PIL committee has put in place proper guidelines, and we are hoping with this in place, then we'll have partners who can come on board and work with us to ensure that all these cases roll out quite fast. You'll agree with me, filing all these cases is very expensive. And we also need to have a proper structure in place to enable us to have a well mapped out members of LSK who can take up these matters and go to court and finalize and get paid for that work as well. Only then can we have successful litigation in all these matters. And that is something that we are working on. It might take long, but once the structures are put in place, we'll then be able to even have partners who can help us litigate on these matters up to finality. And we even track which cases have actually excelled, those which have not performed well, and which of our advocates are actually taking up these matters the way we want them to be handled. So that is work in progress, and I want to believe it's something that can roll out, and it's something that will benefit all of us. But having said that, I want to also touch on something that the CJ has put a question to all of us, the issue of gender mainstreaming. The third gender principle has been a debate for almost 9 years now, right? If not more. And now, let's then reshape this thinking and say, let's not take 2/3, let it be half-half. Make it easy for everybody. Yeah. Whenever you take a stand that you're taking lead as the head, let your deputy be the other gender. Okay. You know, let us have this policy in place. Let us even have it then entrenched in law. Because currently the CJ is rightful putting it that even before him, he has this petition. Why are we discussing it? Yet it's a constitutional, it's well entrenched within the constitution.
Why not just implement it?
Why just not implement it?
Okay.
The courts have already even decided on it. Why are we sitting on it? Because we, the legislators, think the moment it's tabled, what next? We cannot dissolve parliament. But as we sit right now, that parliament is not properly constituted.
And Joy really looks like she wants to come now. I'll come to Joy shortly on the same. Kaka, let me bring you in. 2 weeks ago, AFRICOG released a report which they titled The State Capture of Kenya by the political class, and they singled out business people. Now, the CJ has taken it to the next level. He's talked about business dynasties and tenderpreneurs who influence presidential elections. When a man of this caliber makes such statements, what do you read into that?
I read, thank you very much for inviting me. I read many things, and when I was reading this article, it just brought to me, it reminded me what the CJ is trying to address. And the CJ is basically saying, look, I head an arm of government. We have 3 arms of government, the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. I head one of them, which is the judiciary. But I'm not communicating or talking properly with the executive and parliament. If you are to bring the CJ here, bring the president here, and bring the Speaker of the National Assembly, then we will be solving the problem. And where is the problem? The problem amounts from the fact that we have a new constitution post-2010. And everything we Kenyans want is drawn in that constitution. That Kenyans debated for years. Some died because of that constitution, and that constitution in place. The problem, therefore, seems to be that the interpretation of that constitution is the biggest challenge. And as a CJ, the question then will be, is he right to say these words he's saying? And the answer is yes, he's right. He is sworn to secrecy of the constitution. He is sworn to uphold the constitution. Every word in that constitution must be upheld by the judiciary, must be upheld by the CJ. So when he's saying this, he's seeing through his lenses the challenges that are existing between harmonizing or effecting the supremacy of the constitution vis-a-vis the judiciary, the bunge itself, and the executive. So he's right. Remember that this is not the first time the CJ or the Chief Justice in this country is saying these words. We had a former Chief Justice, William Mutunga, who kept saying that there's a disconnect between the executive, there's a disconnect between the judiciary, and there's a disconnect between parliament. The three arms of government seems not to be pulling in the same direction. Yet, the president himself sought to secrecy of the constitution, upholding the constitution. Speaker of the National Assembly has done the same. So we are saying, therefore, and what the CJ is saying, these three arms of government, although they are independent in their own approach and operation, they must be interdependent. They must have actually synergy. Because there's no way the judiciary, for example, under the CJ, can implement the constitution as a solo institution. You can't. You will just interpret.
Is he saying that there's no synergy, or is he saying that rogue elements
both
have taken over the other two heads?
Lack of synergy leads to now what we are calling about the rogue elements. Because if there's no synergy, if there's no proper harmonization of the constitution, if there's no proper working of the three arms of government, then you give now room for other things to grow and complicate everything else that is coming up in that kind of a thing. So what we need to do, and I know that there are forums that brings the three arms of government together. What is not sure, what is not telling Kenyans is whether those forums work or not work.
Whether they work or don't work.
Yes.
Okay, Joy, coincidentally, if you look on the front page of the Standard, on one hand is that speech by the Chief Justice at the Oxford Union Conference, but on the other hand, it's about empowerment. Uhuru, a new push for gender legislation. President Uhuru Kenyatta at the Women Deliver Conference 2019 in Vancouver, Canada. And you seemed to really want to jump in when she was talking about gender equity and why it's taken so long for Kenya to implement this. Honestly, when history is written in the future, who should be blamed?
It's not taking, you know, even our entire constitution making process, such thoughts were skewed. When we were getting into passing the new constitution, one of the things we wanted to do is to end some of the historical injustices or things that were wrong with us before that we thought we could fix with the law. But what the two-thirds gender rule debacle has proved is that sometimes when you put societal development behind legislative progressiveness, then you have a mismatch. And that's what we have now. Because if you ask Kenyans and tell them, you know what, we have to have this number of constituencies that elect women, they'll be like, where are we the ones to elect women? As if they elect women, they're electing a subclass of a leader. It becomes untenable. The women caucus, we have tried to put suggestions. Let us have pairing, let us have zebra, let us have nominations, we have tried, but we have failed. And we have found that in this failure, it's not just the men who are failing us. It's even the women who are in the legislature who sometimes also fail us. Sometimes even look at how the bill has been drafted. And you look at it like, if this passes the way it is, we are not doing ourselves any favors. What President Uhuru is saying here, I think he's saying the right things, but he doesn't have the machinery to make it work. Because unless he can get his parliamentary colleagues behind it, the law will not pass. And
why
you know,
he can't appoint a 50-50 cabinet?
That much he can do.
As a first step, maybe, to encourage, to show that even though we're not perfect, you know, we're
that much he can do, and we have
strides.
seen his neighbors do it. We have seen in Rwanda, them and gender parity, they're in the same WhatsApp group. So I think even he needs to stop blowing hot and cold and just come to the point. But this shows us, by the way, the buck stops with the legislature. If they wanted, would have passed formulas that would have made this work. This suggestion that Ms. Harriet is saying about having 50-50 is something we said that 3-4 years after the passing of the constitution, after we tried the initial formulas of let's pair this, let's have 4 constituencies with a rotational, let us do this. We said, you know what, let's just split this thing down the middle. But even that has not been receptive. It's coming with punguza mzigo. Maybe somebody will look at it with another eye then. But there's something else that I want to buttress. When you have a situation whereby you have a constitution, which is the mother law, the only way the constitution finds life is in legislative. The laws that come, the statutes that come, give life to the constitution. When our laws come and take life away from the constitution, however well-meaning the judiciary is, however much political goodwill you throw down the process, it will not work. The buck stops with our parliamentarians. And unfortunately, we members of the Law Society make the bulk of the people who are in the legislature. We know how to make the law work for us.
Many are your members.
Yes, and we know how to make the law not work for us. And unfortunately, we have become very clever at weaving the technicalities and the loopholes into the laws. And we're not serving Kenyans. We're not giving them any justice.
I know we're due for a break, but just a quick thought from you because we'll switch gears after this. FIDA say that when President Uhuru Kenyatta was about to name the new cabinet after the 2017 two elections, they sent him a list of 200 names of competent women who could have served. You heard that as well.
Yes.
When those CVs were before the president and the deputy president, what consideration was it that was so great that they did not feel to go that way? Because obviously the positive press they would have received, the kind of glory they would have, shown in that they are now a progressive country, but other interests overrode those.
Exactly.
What do you think were those other interests?
It's what the Chief Justice is talking about. When we still allow people in government, people in the civil service to do business with national government, then you're beholden to those interests. Look at what happens. Exactly. Look at what happens when you have elections in America. The people who donate the largest donations then actually have say in who's going to be judge, who's going to be attorney general, who's going to be what, and they actually influence some of those major decisions. In Kenya, we see the same. Although it is subtle, you see the effects when it comes forward. Because I agree with you, it's not a lack of competent leaders. We have competent women leaders sitting around this table. But you don't see anybody picking a corner and saying, by the way, Joy, would you be interested in doing this and that? Because maybe if somebody looks at... Yes, if you look at where Ratili Tanguka, I'm not assisting in the big scheme of things. But beyond and above that, some of those things are also political gifts. They are rewards. So people did something in the campaign, and so they must be considered ahead of competence. And it's unfortunate.
Harriet, very briefly.
Yes, let me just weigh in on that in support of what she is saying and just open up the discussion. This is a man-eat-man society. It is a society of for the survival, for the fittest.
Even that phrase man-eat-man, don't you think that's already
gender
insensitive?
Yes, but let's face it. And the moment we face all these issues that are affecting us, then we can come up with solutions. Now, look at it this way. The gender equation has been made, or debate has been made a woman's affair. And I want to tweak the balance and tell also the male counterpart. But in the next 10 years... Two
sitting next to you,
yes,
two opposite you.
Yes, yes, yes. In the next 10 years, there'll be the ones who are saying, our space is gone.
The boy child.
The boy child. You've all heard about this boy-child debate and how the boy child has been left out of this equation, and it's true. Go to schools right now, the primary schools right now, the high schools right now. The ladies are doing very well.
The law school.
Go to law school. The CJ will tell you in the recent inauguration ceremonies for lawyers, almost two-thirds, actually not two-thirds, almost an eighth of those who are admitted are the male. It then means, and this is trickling down to all other disciplines, the boy child is actually being fizzled out slowly. Now, we need to tell our legislators that they should stop making this gender debate a woman's issue. It actually stopped being a woman's issue a long time ago. And where we are going, I would love to see our brothers coming out to actually champion for this. Look at South Africa, and I'm very proud of their current cabinet.
Yeah.
It is well balanced.
Very diverse.
It is very diverse, you know. And I mean, it's time now that we embrace working together.
Okay.
Let's stop frustrating the other, thinking that we are ahead, because a time will come that will actually, all of us will actually need each other.
So it shouldn't be a male versus female?
It's not a male versus female.
Okay.
And this also needs to go to all employment opportunities, all boards, all commissions, every other institution. And you'll realize at times when you have a balanced gender, things actually move easily because things are well balanced anyway.
And hopefully less corruption.
Yeah. we really have to take a break, but I'd like you to clarify when you say that the male is being fizzled out, what exactly you mean by that. Because it's just a matter of sharing the same platform. When you uplift a particular gender, it doesn't mean you're fizzling out the other one. You can easily balance the two.
That is true.
When one has been oppressed for so long, and then now they're finally speaking out, you don't say that they're being fizzled out.
That is one. But again, what I want you to think through is that when a certain portion of the environment or the ecosystem is highly frustrated,
Yeah.
they tend to work really, really, really hard to match up.
Okay.
So you'll find currently, if it's papers, the ladies are really going to school. You know, when you talk about leadership platforms, the ladies are really, really working hard to actually either match up or to be better.
Yeah.
You know, when we talk about mentorship programs, you'll find the ladies are more seated in that room.
Okay.
So you'll find, what I'm trying to say is, the ladies have been left out for so long, they are actually trying to fit in, and now they know their space,
Okay.
and they're actually working 3 times as hard
Okay.
for them to actually justify why they need to be seated in those spaces.
Positions. All right.
And if not,
Yeah.
go to the next level.
Okay, we have to take a quick break.